Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing my March wrap up. So I technically read 13 books in March. Some of them were longer, some of them were novellas, some of them were manga. But overall, really good reading month. I had one DNF, which I will talk about a little bit later, but I'm gonna continue on and keep doing what I've been doing where I go by genre. Although this month I mostly only read fantasy and sci-fi. There's really only, there's really only like one other genre. So it's mostly just fantasy books that we're going to be talking about today. So first up, I read Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, which is the second book in the Live Ship Trader series. I really loved this book. I think I liked the first book more, but I still did really enjoy this one very much. It was very interesting because a lot of the character plots went in a completely different direction than I anticipated them going in, specifically for one character. And it's weird because I hated this character in book one and I hated them in book two also, but despite disliking them, I did really like their perspective whenever I would get it because it was interesting. I'm curious what this character is going to do in the third book because they definitely underwent the biggest change of anyone in the series. In this book, we are delving further into the politics of the Bingtown traders. We're seeing the world kind of expand a little bit and the consequences of some of the decisions that the government has made and how it's negatively impacting the Bingtown traders. We see the tension between the old traders and the new traders definitely come to a head. And there is a really exciting reveal in this one that I was just mind blown. And then that introduced another element too, which I am really enjoying and is really making me very excited to read the last book in the series. I just love Robin Hobb's writing so much, and I'm so excited to read what's next, and then also finally to get back to the characters that I love from the Farseer trilogy. I'm super highly anticipating doing that. I've been thinking about this one a lot, so I think I am going to pick up the last book, Ship of Destiny, probably in April. These are really long reads. They're almost 1,000 pages. They take me quite a while to read, but I think I just feel compelled. I have to pick up the last one really soon. So really loved this. This was a great way to kick off my reading month. Then I read both Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self, which is on my shelf. I just don't want to be holding two books at the same time, but I figured it made sense to talk about them together. So this is the beginning of Mistborn Era 2. We're following completely different characters. Everything takes place, I think it's 300 years after the events of the Hero of Ages. So we are following Wax and Wayne. Wax is a noble lawman and he left the noble city and went to this area called the Roughs, which is a tougher part of town, and it's there that he met Wayne, and the two of them have a whole buddy cop routine going on. It's a lot of fun. I really liked these characters, and then we also meet Marisai, I think is how you say her name. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I really like her a lot. She's probably my favorite character in here, and this is going to be a really weird comparison, but the trio vibes of those three kind of give me the same kind of fun feelings as the characters in The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare, which they're totally different. They're not similar at all outside of the fact that they're historical and we've got a trio with one woman and two men, but it just had that same element of fun to it. That's why it reminded me of that. But this is a Western and it's a really quick read. I really enjoyed reading it. So the first one, Alloy of Law, I think was a really good introduction to the way that the world is now, to these new characters. It definitely had a couple of elements of the first Mistborn series, obviously, outside of allomancy, because that's the entire magic system. So obviously that was very present. It did a really good job of separating itself. And then in book two, which I really liked a lot more, Shadows of Self, that one definitely harkened back to the original Mistborn series, very heavily. So I really loved the second one, specifically for that reason. I think it was a good idea to have kind of an introductory novel before going and bringing those elements back into the story. But once they were there, I just love them. And now I'm so excited to read the next 2 books. I'm really curious how things are going to go. These are, again, really quick reads, really fun, and if you've read the original Mistborn series, I highly recommend these. I also read Mistborn Secret History, which is book 3.5. However, if you read the preface to it, Brandon Sanderson recommends reading books 4 and 5 in the Mistborn series, which are Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self, before reading Mistborn Secret History, because there are some spoilers of things that happen. They're not super heavy, I would say. Mistborn Secret History definitely, it's labeled 3.5, so it definitely ties more to the first Mistborn series, but I just had so much fun reading it and revisiting the character that it follows, and I felt like there was a lot of really good information in there about the Cosmere as a whole. And having read a lot of Brandon Sanderson's other work, it was really fun reading it and being like, oh, wow. I really think that that is a good way to go about things if you are interested in the Cosmere as a whole. Obviously, these books can be enjoyed. They are full stories on their own, so it's not like you'll miss very important information for a story if you don't have certain things read, but it's really fun for the people who are really heavily involved in the fandom and invested in the Cosmere as a whole. So yeah, really enjoyed all 3 of those, and I'm definitely going to continue with the series next month. Then I read The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This is the first book in the Bone Season series. Samantha Shannon actually just recently announced book 5, which is called The Dark Mirror, and it's coming out in January. So I wanted to read at least the first book before The Broken Binding came out with their edition of the Mime Order. This is the sprayed pages. Thankfully, I was able to do that, and I did enjoy this one, so I did end up ordering book 2. Hopefully, I'll read each of them as they get delivered. This series follows a character named Paige, and she is a clairvoyant. She is a dream walker. She is super rare, and technically her abilities are illegal in this world, so she gets captured and imprisoned. And while she is in this whole world that she didn't know existed, there's a little bit of a rebellion that is kind of stirring up, and the person who has chosen her as their apprentice, I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology, but that's essentially what it is, has never picked anyone before. So she makes some friends, she makes some rivals, and there's a lot of tension of everything going on in here. And again, there's a little bit of the seeds of rebellion that are laid, and I am very excited to see where things are going to go from where we left off in this book. I was a little bit nervous because this is an older book. I think it might have originally been sold as YA. I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe that if it was, it does kind of age up because there are so many books in it. So I was a little bit nervous for that reason, but I ended up really enjoying it, really liking Samantha Shannon's writing style, really liked all of the glimpses into European history and just different landmarks that you can currently visit. So overall, just had a really good time with this one. Then I read Masters of Death by Olivia Blake, and I loved this book. This one was so much fun. It's very humorous. It reminded me so much of Good Omens, and I actually feel like the synopsis of this one was incredibly misleading because basically they tell you that you are following a vampire who is a real estate agent and needs to sell this house, but unfortunately there is a ghost in the house, so she has to hire someone to exorcise that ghost and get rid of them. And while that is the most basic plot synopsis that you can give, there is so much more to this novel than just that. There's so much more, we follow so many characters. You get different points of view from lots of different people, which again really reminded me of Good Omens. There is, something happening between heaven and hell. We've got all of these different players that are involved, and some of the aforementioned characters do tie very heavily into that plot, but I just thought overall it was such a blast to read. Again, really, really humorous. I really enjoyed the writing of this one. I really enjoyed the characters, and I really enjoyed the overall story. Also is kind of like Hazbin Hotel. So if you like either of those things, Hazbin Hotel or Good Omens, I highly recommend checking out Masters of Death. I think that you'll really enjoy this one too. I was very pleasantly surprised. I wasn't really sure what to expect since Olivia Blake can be very hit or miss for me, but this was definitely one of my favorite books of hers so far. Then I read Mythos by Stephen Fry, and this is just like a collection of short stories. They're all retellings of Greek myth, and they go in kind of like a chronological order. We are starting like very early on with the absolute beginning of everything, and I actually listened to the audiobook, so Stephen Fry's narration was really fun to listen to. It was great to hear his book in his own words, and he's pretty humorous himself, so I think he did a really good job of like reading it. I do want to go back and look at some of the illustrations and like pieces of artwork that are highlighted in this book, because there is a lot of that, and I think this is just a really beautiful book overall. I've owned it for so long and I've been wanting to read it for so long, and I'm so glad that I finally did. There are 2 more books in the series, both of which I already own, and then there is a 4th one which is going to be a retelling of like the Odyssey that is expected to come out. I don't know if it's this year or next year. But yeah, I was really excited to start these. And again, if you like Greek mythology, Greek myth retellings, I think these are really fun. Now moving on to sci-fi. So first I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and this is another one that I listened to on audiobook and just completely fell in love with. I'm not surprised at all, because The Martian was one of my favorite books that I read the year that I read it, and now Project Hail Mary is one of my favorite books of this year so far. I just had such a blast finding out like what the heck was going on in the story. We're following a character who wakes up from a coma, has no idea where they are, how they got there, what's going on, but they're in the middle of space and they need to kind of figure out why they're there. And it's really good to go in not knowing anything else besides that, because watching the story unfold is like part of the fun of it. I expected to love this one and it totally delivered. I loved it so much, and I'm really excited to get Andrew to read this one too, because I know he's gonna also enjoy it. Then I read The Lesser Devil by Christopher Rocchio. This is book 1.5 in the Sun Eater series. It is a novella that takes place between Empire of Silence and Howling Dark. We are following Hadrian's brother Crispin on kind of like a side quest adventure along with Hadrian's sister Sabine, and the 2 of them have found themselves in a situation where there's an assassination attempt that's happening on their lives, but they don't really know why or who is behind it, and then you see all of it unfolds throughout this novella. So I liked this one. I thought that it was fun. I did not like it anywhere near as much as I loved Empire of Silence, but I am really glad that I read it, because I just want to read everything in this world, and I could see some of these things and some of these characters showing up in later books in Sun Eater. So yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was, but it wasn't like a favorite. Then I read The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. This is another one that I listened to on audiobook, and this was narrated by Will Wheaton. I really like Will Wheaton as an audiobook narrator. I find his voice just like really easy to listen to, probably because I've spent so much time watching Star Trek and I'm just like, I don't know, used to his cadence or whatever, but I think his voice works really well for a lot of my favorite sci-fi books and fantasy. Yeah, a lot of my favorite sci-fi books. So this was fun. It took place during COVID, and we are following a character who gets laid off from his job and then ends up getting another job, and he is basically taken to this place where their job is to preserve kaiju. So it's really funny. It's like a very, very non-serious sci-fi book, very humorous, definitely a light read. While I thought it was fun, I thought it was kind of just like okay. It definitely wasn't a favorite for me. I did find it to be entertaining, but I just didn't like love it the way that I was hoping to. But I am glad that I finally got around to reading it, because I've had it for a while. It's, it's short, it's quick, it's fun, and if you like kaiju, I would give it a shot. My next category is manga. So I read volume 5 and volume 6 of One Piece, just continuing on my One Piece journey. I didn't love volume 5 as much as some of the earlier volumes, but then I did really like the ending of volume 6. I'm trying to remember exactly which story arc it was because I'm also reading volume 7 at the moment, so it's hard to like differentiate, but just know that I am continuing to enjoy the time that I am investing in One Piece. It's been a really like fun surprise for me to love this series. Then moving on to nonfiction, I read / listened to a book called Dolls of Our Lives, Why We Can't Quit American Girl by Mary Mahoney and Allison Horrocks. And this was just basically all about the history of American Girl dolls. This was really interesting. I had Kirsten and Samantha when I was much younger. My dad probably still has them like in our attic, but I loved those dolls so much. I loved reading the books about them, and it was just a really nostalgic read to go back and hear like the history and like, you know, just different like moments in pop culture, like the American Girl magazine. And I just remember like getting the catalog and circling everything that I wanted, and like it was just so much fun. But then it does also dissect like a lot of the issues with American Girl doll, and how like while they did try to have diversity within their line, it wasn't always handled well, and some of the stories could have been handled a lot better. But yeah, it was fun. It was another one that was like a quick read. It felt like I was listening to a podcast. I think that the authors actually do have a podcast too, but it definitely did have a lot of like personal anecdotes from their history with American Girl doll, and like how they became friends and bonded over their shared love. So it was enjoyable. Not the best book ever. It was fine. And then the one DNF that I had this month was Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I started reading this one and I just did not like it at all. And that thus continues. Olivia Blake being extremely hit or miss for me, because I loved Masters of Death. Hated what I read of Alone with You in the Ether. I think I read like 20% before I was like, no, I'm done. I'm putting this down. As I often say, I loved Atlas 6. I hated Atlas Paradox. So I just really like never know what I'm going to get with her. But I decided to just stop reading it instead of forcing myself through the full thing. Then moving on to TV and film. So I actually did not watch any movies at all this month, but I did watch some TV. So I mentioned last month that Andrew and I have been watching shows on Dropout, which is, it used to be College Humor and then changed the name to Dropout. It's basically just a group of like extremely talented people that do improv shows, and they also do Dimension 20, which runs a ton of different D&D campaigns. So in March, we watched the first season of Make Some Noise, which is so much fun. If you've ever seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, it's basically like that, but it's a more like modern, updated version, and it's also completely uncensored. So there's always a lot of like inappropriate things, but they're just so funny, and these people are so incredibly talented. Make Some Noise is actually a spin-off of the show Game Changer, which I talked about in my last wrap-up video. Make Some Noise, basically there are 3 guests that are on each show, and they're given prompts. They have to either like act out or make sound effects to fulfill those prompts. It's always really funny, always really enjoyable. And yeah, so we watched the full first season of that. And then we also watched seasons 1 through 6 of Breaking News, which is again also on Dropout. It's also improv. It's the same group of people on this show. This one is like really short, so most episodes are like 3 to 8 minutes. It's 4 people. Yeah, so it's a group of 4 people. 2 of them are news anchors. 2 of them are essentially like the weather person and the field reporter. During the show, they do not know anything that the teleprompter is going to say. They just have to read like whatever comes up. And the gimmick of it is that they're not allowed to smile or laugh while they are reading. And if they do, they get points taken away. And whoever is the loser at the end of the episode usually has to do some kind of funny like punishment kind of thing, whether it's like eat something weird or like really like ridiculous fun things. Those actually start like later on in the game, but they're really fun. I feel like we've been watching these people now for a while, and their comedy is just so good. There are some reoccurring themes within some of the episodes. I'm really enjoying everything that they have on Dropout. And then the last category would be games, but I honestly don't have anything new to talk about. I'm just continuing to play Hades like all the time. I just can't quit Hades. I decided that I want to 100% the game, and I'm actually like getting fairly close to doing so. We've already gotten all of like the endings. We got the extra epilogue. There are just like some prophecies that I still have to fulfill, but I'm like, you know, getting closer and closer every day, and I've gotten to the point where I can beat it fairly quickly now. It's usually like about a half an hour that I can get through an entire run, which feels really good. I really love it. It's just so much fun. Play Hades if you have not. But that is everything that I have to talk about today. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon in a new one. Bye!